In today's video, I want to talk to you about the drum equipment that I'm using in Brazil. Hello, my name is Matthew Jackson, and I'm CCM drummer. Welcome to my channel, and please feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and also like the videos, comment, and share. Anyway, let me go ahead and get started on my drum equipment situation. Now, originally I was living in the U.S. and then my wife and I decided to move down here to Brazil in the spring of 2019. So, anyway, a drum set is something that's really something you really just can't throw in a suitcase, you know what I mean, like a saxophone or something. And so when I came to Brazil, I couldn't bring my drum set with me, at least the entire drum set I couldn't bring with me. But so we just decided to buy a drum set once I got down here and leave the set that I had in America in America. So, but one thing I discovered real fast when I went to the music stores here in Brazil is the high-end drum equipment is very, very expensive. If you're talking, you know, the high end of Pearl, Ludwig, Tama, DW, just astronomically expensive. 3 or 4 times higher price than what you would pay if you were in America, okay? So they have a lot of Taiwanese knockoff, cheaper, subpar, lower grade kits on the drum market here in Brazil, more so than in America, because obviously these lower subpar drum kits are more affordable for most people, because there's not a lot of people that have a lot of money here in Brazil. I mean, you got some rich people here, but mostly it's a banana shaped economy where most people are either poor or middle class. And so we were in the same boat because we're missionaries here in Brazil. We're not exactly loaded for cash ourselves, so I had to succumb to buying a subpar kit. And I want to talk to you about how I made modifications to make my subpar kit a little better. Now let me start off with the toms. Let me give you the basic dimensions of the drum set that I bought. The bass drum is a 22-inch bass drum and 16 inches deep. This floor tom is a 16-inch floor tom and is 15 1/4 inches deep. And then of course I have a 12-inch upper tom, mounted tom, and I believe if I remember right, the depth of the shell is 8 1/2 inches deep. Now the first thing I did when I bought this drum kit, also I had a 13-inch tom that also came with it, but I only used 2 toms on my drum setup, one up, one down, that's it. I don't use that. I don't use double mounted toms. One's plenty for me. Now one of the first things I did with both these toms is I took the drum heads off of both the bottom and the tops and just had the shells. And then I have a countertop in the kitchen which is either granite or marble, I don't know which, but it's a very hard stone surface, very, very, very flat. And what I did is I took these drums and I put them on the flat surface and tried to determine, well, which side has the better bearing edge. Because when you're talking about drums, the quality of the sound, obviously bearing edge is a very, very, very key part of having a good sound. Among other things, obviously the density of the shell is a big factor. The way the bearing edge is cut is a big factor as well. But honestly, I don't know what kind of wood these drums are made out of. I just know it's not maple, oak, or birch. You know, I know it's not one of those high-end blends of wood, or mahogany. It's not that. But what I did is I took both heads off of both drums, and then I determined okay, which side has the better bearing edge? Because you got to start with something. And I discovered that the bottom bearing edges on both drums were actually better than the top. So obviously, where do you think I'm going to put my batter head? I'm going to put it on the side that has the better bearing edge. So that's the first thing I did, is I determined which side had the better bearing edge, and I used the better bearing edge for the top head. All right, the next thing I did is the original rims that came with these toms were made out of a very cheap, inferior grade of metal that flexes very easily when you tune. You know, if you tighten down on one lug really, really hard and the other's not so hard, you'll see a little dip. Well, that's not good. You want the highest grade metal as possible, and obviously you want the rims to be as flat and straight as possible, just like you want your bearing edge to be as flat and straight as possible, because it's the rim that's complementing the bearing edge. Your rim is what's applying your head to the bearing edge. So obviously you want your rim to be just as flat and straight as your bearing edge to complement each other. You want it to be perfectly flush. So I went to either Sweetwater, Interstate Music, or Drum Factory Direct, one of those three. And I bought, when I made my furloughs back to America, I bought better rims online and had them sent to me. Then I brought them down here to Brazil. So these are not the original rims with these toms. I actually bought these, and these are not the original heads with these toms. So I bought better heads. Now this is a Remo pinstripe. This is not a double ply. On my church kit at the church I play at, I bought Evans double ply and put them on those drums. I was going to put them here, but I said, oh, let me try the Remos on here first. If they sound good, then I'll just put the Evans double ply on the church kit. And that's what I did. They sound pretty good. Then I put the Remo rings on the toms to muffle them. I don't use the moon gel. I'm not really a moon gel kind of guy. I'm a ring guy, you know. So that's what I did. Also, I stripped the mounting hardware off completely because I use a snare stand to mount my upper tom. So yeah, you don't need the mounting hardware if you're going to put it on a snare stand, right? So why have that there? Gives me a little more flexibility in how I want to position the tom. Now, here's one piece of advice I want to give, because there's a lot of drummers nowadays using a snare drum to put their upper tom on. Now, in my case, obviously, the batter side, the main side, I have a Remo pinstripe head. On the other side, I have a Remo silent stroke head. This is obviously much louder. Now, what I do is I have two setups with my kit. I have what is called the hard kit and the soft kit. So when I'm just practicing learning my drum cover song, the song that I'm going to be doing in my drum cover, I actually practice on this side. So I'll flip the drum over and practice on this. Same thing with the floor tom, and I'll show you that in a minute. So when I'm ready to record a drum cover, then I'll take it, flip it over, and play the hard side. And the cool thing about this setup is you can have your silent stroke head here as tight or as loose as you want, and it's not going to have any bearing on the tension or the tone of your batter head. This is almost like back in the 70s, because I remember back in the 70s, most drummers took their bottom heads off and just had the top head on. And we like that really dry thud sound back then. That was the in vogue thing. Well, that's basically what you got here. It's almost like, you know, acoustically and musically, it's almost like you don't have a head at all, because this is really a mesh screen and the sound just goes right through it. It's like not having a bottom head at all, but you got one, but it has no bearing on this. So, yeah. Now, if you're a drummer and your setup involves putting your upper tom on a snare stand and you have a regular resonance head, and that's a part of your drum sound, one thing you want to remember is when you put it on, do not tighten the basket too tight. You only want to have it tight enough just to hold the drum so it doesn't fall off the stand. Because if you have it too tight, it's going to choke out the resonance and defeat the purpose of having a resonance head in the first place. It's going to affect the tone and the sound of your drum, and you don't want to do that. In my case, it's a non-issue. I could have this thing as tight as I want. It's not going to affect, because I only have one functioning head when I play the tops. When I play the hard side, when I play the soft side, it doesn't matter. So, now, let me move on here. Here's the floor tom. Like I said, it's a 16-inch. And again, it has a silent stroke on the bottom and a regular head on the top. I had to adjust the leg mounts and move them up a little so that way I could, you know, have the drum, the floor tom at the same height, whether it's the hard kit or the soft kit setup. So that's how I did that. So, all right, let me move on here. Here's a picture here. Let me talk to you about snare drums. Now you're probably wondering, well, gee, CCM drummer, what's the name of your kit? What's the brand name? I haven't even told you that, have I? Well, if you really, really want to know, there's the logo. Because this is the original snare drum that came with this kit. It's called Phantom, okay? And I think Phantom is a very fitting name for my drum kit, because I want it to be, I want the brand name to be Phantom. I don't want people to know, you know. But anyway, this is the rim I was talking about. It's a very inferior grade of metal, but I put a 14-inch silent stroke on here. So this is the practice snare. When I'm practicing, I practice with this snare, okay? And then when I'm ready to go to the hard kit, I put on a new snare. Now, here's my ace in the hole here. This is a DW snare, drummers or collector's series. It's called the collector's series. Very nice. It has 10 lugs, very solid, triple flange. And of course, all the rims on my drum set, on the toms and the snare, are all triple flange. I don't use die-cast tubes. Not that I have a problem with it, I just don't have die-cast tubes, but this is a very good drum. I got a very good deal on this DW snare drum. The dealer knocked off $100. I think I bought this thing for $400. Very good deal. I'm very pleased. I think he wanted to move his red. And another thing too, it fits the color scheme of my drum set here in Brazil, because it's also red. It's not exactly like the toms and the bass drum are, but close enough. You know, it's red. But this is a very sweet, oh man, this is a great snare drum. It never sucks to have a DW snare drum, never. So anyway, and again, I put a ring on here, you know, to muffle the sound, especially when you're playing in church. You don't want to blow these people away. And you know, the room I'm playing in is 700 square feet, you know. And I don't have a shield, and I'm not playing inside an enclosed drum booth. I control my volume. Anyway, so yeah, so that's how I do that. When I go to the hard kit, I just change out the snares. When I go to the hard kit, I just flip over the toms, okay? Now that I've talked about snare drums and toms, let me talk to you about the bass drum. What I did with the bass drum. But bear with me, let me do some moving around here. Be right with you. Hang on. Okay, this is the bass drum. And again, I did the same thing with the bass drum as I did with the toms. I bought new rims. These are new rims that are stronger, better grade of metal. Here's the original rim that came with the bass drum. The metal's not quite as good. It is solid. Let me put this over here. And I put I bought an Evans EMAD double ply for the batter side. And for the resonant side, what I did is I cut a little porthole here like most drummers have. And then I spray painted with a flat black paint over the brand name. So you can't tell the brand name by reading what's on here, like most drums do. Okay. And of course on the toms and the bass drum, I took off the brand name plate. So you don't know the person watching me play if I was to ever. Well, let me back up. One of the things I wanted to do is prepare this kit in the event I was to be offered a gig and go play a gig somewhere here in Brazil. I wanted to have some good equipment ready to go, ready to play, where I wouldn't be an embarrassment. Now, let's just get down to brass tacks here. I don't care how good of a drummer you are. People are going to judge you by the equipment that you have. That's just a fact. You're going to be judged by the equipment you have. Because after, when you get recruited for a gig, they're looking for a drummer, the first thing they're going to ask you is after how long you've been playing and what kind of music you play and your experience. The question always comes, well, tell me about your equipment. What kind of equipment you got? So you want to have good equipment. It's very important to have good equipment for people to take you seriously. And so while this drum set now, it sounds much, much better than it did originally when I bought it from the music store. It might never be as good as a DW or a Tamistar Classic or, one of these high-end, but at least it's respectable, and I won't be embarrassing myself in the event I get called out on a gig. I want to be ready to go. And it's now sounds respectable. So, now, let me talk to you about two products, well actually three. Here's a crash cymbal, 16-inch crash. It's called Avatar. I bought this here in Brazil, in Brazilian prices in the Brazilian economy. The Brazilian economy is very, very protectionist. And so the reason the imported drum equipment is so expensive because you have to pay high tariffs to get it in here, okay? Because the Brazilians would prefer you buy Brazilian products than imported products. That's why it's so high. They're very protectionist. But this is one product I could buy at reasonable rates. And the cymbal's not bad. It's a little bright. I used it in one of my drum covers here in Brazil. And the microphone on my camera, it's just too sensitive. So it would be a good cymbal if I went out and did gigs and did a concert or something like that. But for drum covers, it's not a good cymbal for that. But it's a good crash cymbal. Now, one thing I did in America, just like I have drum heads, the silent stroke drum heads for practice, I've got, they call it low volume. This is this little Zildjian product. These look like colanders. You can cook spaghetti and drain the water from your noodles. But I have them in different sizes. I have my hi-hats. So basically, after I flip the toms, to whatever I want, when I'm ready to play the hard kit, I take off I have a 16-inch crash here, and then I've got a 18-inch that I use for the practice ride. So yeah, these low volume cymbals are merely for practice, just like my silent stroke heads are. Okay. Now for the bass drum, the only difference is I have a mallet for the hard stuff, and then this is a little softer. I'd say maybe 30% softer, you know, if you use this mallet. So I don't change out the drum heads, but you can, yeah, it's a little louder with this than this. Yeah. So, but it's almost like a small miniature foamy tennis ball. That's what it looks like. Anyway, so that's how I adjust on the bass drum, because I can't change out heads, you know, just like you can't with your snares. I have 2 snares, but I can't have 2 bass drums, not practical. Okay, so I do have a 16-inch crash that I bought here in Brazil. It's just not what I'd want to use on a drum cover, but in other venues, it may work quite well. Here's a ride cymbal that I bought here in Brazil. Now, at the time I was at the music store, they only had 2 20-inch ride cymbals on the market. The other was a Zildjian, if you can believe it. But, and the price was fairly reasonable. This was a little bit cheaper than the Zildjian was. But when I started playing, this kind of sounded better, had a brighter sound. The cup has a good ping. The sheen on the body of the cymbal's not bad. So, and the Zildjian didn't quite have the sound I was looking for with the ping and the sheen. So I went ahead and bought this. It's made by Ingate PXT. I've never heard of these guys before, but I don't play the ride cymbal all that much anyway. But it's average, it's decent, it works, it functions. It's not gonna be a big embarrassment to me if I were to play it, you know. Is it as good as my 20-inch Zildjian ride back in America? Well, probably not, but it's good enough. It'll do, it'll suffice. Okay, there's one more product I wanna show you guys that I bought here in Brazil that's really good. But let me put all this stuff away first. So, bear with me as I make a set change here. Let me put the bass drum away. This is a cymbal case. This is a Brazilian product made here in Brazil. And I tried to find American cymbal cases. Now, we've got some good cymbal cases in America, too. That you look online, you know, go to Sweetwater, Interstate Music, or even Guitar Center, or Drum Factory Direct. Oh, by the way, the bass drum rims were bought from Drum Factory Direct. But this is where I put my cymbals. And it's a square case as opposed to a round case. Really good. It's like an anvil case, really good product. One thing, this investment, I think it cost me around 500 reais, which if you were to convert that to an American dollar, it's about $100. Because right now, in today's economy, for one American dollar, it's 5 Brazilian reais, give or take, you know. But this is a really good product, and like the rims that I bought in America from Drum Factory Direct, I put them in here, and then I put this on the plane. This is one of my checked bags when I get on an airplane and fly back and forth from Brazil to America. Yeah, and I bought my Evans EMAD head at Guitar Center in America, then I put it in here, and you know, so yeah, because you know, 22-inch drum heads and 22-inch rims, you can't put those in a suitcase. You can put some 13-inch hi-hat cymbals in a suitcase, but you can't, you know, put the bigger stuff in there. So yeah, so this investment has really paid off huge. It's very good, protects your gear very well, makes a good makeshift suitcase, and we were able to put other stuff in here, other non-drumming stuff in here as well. And so, yeah, I'm very pleased with this investment. Anyway, that is about it. I can't think of anything else about my drumming situation in terms of Brazilian equipment is concerned, and how I've adapted Brazilian equipment with what I've had to make a better sound. So, anyway, speaking of equipment, if you really want to know a lot about drum equipment or learn a lot, there's a guy I know by the name of Earl Bennett, and he has a YouTube channel called Earl Bennett and Earl Drum. This guy's like a freaking encyclopedia of knowledge about drum equipment, cymbals, hardware, drums, heads. I mean, he knows a lot. And he has a show every Saturday morning, 9 or 9:30 Eastern time. And he talks about that kind of stuff. And if you have any questions about equipment, but he talks about the technical aspects of playing on, doing drum covers and uploading them to YouTube, the different styles of music, the different kinds of drummers out there and what their strengths were, and their styles. I mean, this guy knows a lot. He has guests on, so yeah, you would be well served if you're a working drummer, whether you do cover drums or you do gig, studio work, whatever, to subscribe to his channel and to watch his show called Hanging with the Hammer every week. So anyway, there's a plug for Earl Bennett. So having said all that, let me go ahead and end this video. Thank you for watching. And again, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Take care. Oh, comments are good too. All right. God bless you guys. Have a good day.